Tell me more about the kind of education that MLK got that really solidified his kind of Marxist foundation.
Now, this may take you by surprise, or maybe not, but King actually had to be convinced into becoming a pastor. Now, you know how young people are. Before they go away to college, they want to become something, they had their heart set on something, a dream set on something, but then they get into college. King actually wanted to become a lawyer. But somewhere along the line, somewhere along the way, he was maybe talking to family members, talking to some other people. He saw some things and he decided to become a pastor, right? So here's the question, though. The school he went to, Crozer Seminary School, was it actually preparing him to be a Christian pastor? So whatever they instilled in him, was it actually morally tuned in to Christian values and Christian ethics? Because they had an ideology about them that they were instilling in their students. But was it actually connected to what we read about in the Bible as far as Jesus Christ and the disciples and so on? Check this out.
So he was convinced to go into the ministry and to go to Crozer Theological Seminary, which by the time King went there already had a lot of Marxist professors, those who were Marxists and those who were just proponents of the so-called social gospel. And King was able to take that teaching in, make it his own, and it would be the launching pad of his career.
So now we've discovered that the schools MLK attended, the professors there actually taught Marxist ideas or ideals. So the question we're asking now is, on the one hand, Marxism, the other hand, Christianity, do they oppose one another or are they comparable to one another? But I believe they oppose one another. So if that's true that they oppose one another, then the students who are learning this information, you have to ask the question, when they do go and pastor a church, are they teaching gospel truths of Jesus Christ? Are they teaching his gospel, or are they teaching more so Marxist ideas or ideals? Check this out.
A lot of people might not know the names and the terms that you listed earlier, the Frankfurt School, Angela Davis, Marcuse. Now, we have talked about those people many times, especially back in 2020, when so many people were like, what is the ideology underneath so much of what is happening? But not everyone was tuning in then, and not everyone may remember. So can you tell us, what is the Frankfurt School and this school of thought that is Marxism that you're saying deeply affected MLK's ideology?
That's a really good question. So the Frankfurt School, to answer your first question, these were professors out of Germany who fled Germany in the 1940s, and they were accepted by administrators at the University of Columbia in New York. There were a lot of pro-Marxist moves that were being made at Columbia. I mean, you had Union Theological Seminary there, where they were already teaching their seminary students with a very Marxist bent that was reminiscent of the kinds of teachings that you would get from Walter Rauschenbusch, who was a so-called theologian out of Hell's Kitchen, New York, who basically visited England in the late 1800s and was enamored of the tactics of what was called the Fabian Society.
Tell me more about the kind of education that MLK got that really solidified his kind of Marxist foundation.
Really good question. So Michael King Sr. Was a proponent of the social gospel. It's something that he wrote about in his unpublished memoir. And not only that, he would often go to these Communist Front organization events that were put on across the South by an organization called the National Negro Congress, but there was another subsidiary of it called the Southern Negro Youth League or something like that. And they would put on all these organizations in the South They would have Paul Robeson, who was a famous singer in those days, who was a avowed communist. He would come and speak at these events. And Michael King Sr. would go to these events along with older Ralph Abernathy and Rosa Parks and others. And so am I saying that Michael King Sr. was a communist? Not really. I'm just saying that he was intrigued by a lot of the rhetoric that was being disseminated in those days, some of which he was preaching in his very own church, which Martin Luther King had a front row access to.
So we found out a number of things about MLK. First of all, he didn't believe certain things, specific things that would actually make someone a Christian. The schools he attended had professors who they believed in Marxism. They taught Marxist ideas and ideals. There was a group called the Fabian Society that actually teaches or taught, maybe it's still around, but it taught people how to use Marxism and communism to infiltrate a society. And he had his father, Michael King Sr., who he was enamored by the works of Marxists, by Karl Marx, as well as he used to attend a lot of different communist events, as well as he was a proponent of the social gospel. So with King being around that, is it safe to say that, he would also be into teaching and pushing that same type of ideology that he was surrounded by, going to the colleges, being around his father? Because if you actually listen to King's work, it's more so the social gospel than it is the gospel of Jesus Christ. Think about it.